So the t-shirt I take at face value. If Nikki Haley somehow manages to snag the Republican nomination away from Trump, earning the right to go head-to-head with Biden in November, it won't be the first time she's pulled off an against all odds win. More on that later. But the way things stand, there just aren't any paths to victory open for her right now.
Can she get the delegates she needs? Obviously not.
It's certainly not her time. The sooner she realizes it, the better she'll be.
She lost in Iowa. She lost in New Hampshire. She lost in Nevada, where Trump wasn't even on the ballot. The top choice in that race was nobody. She lost in the Virgin Islands. She lost in South Carolina, her home state.
But it's her home state. It's, since 1972, there's never been a candidate in either party who has lost their home state. And she was governor of South Carolina for 6 years.
And every other candidate dropped out a long time ago, but not her.
Some of you, perhaps a few of you in the media, came here today to see if I'm dropping out of the race. Well, I'm not.
So why stay in a race you're not likely to win?
I do think there are probably a variety of motivations behind this.
There are any number of explanations for why she's still running, and it's not yet clear what the real one is.
So it's only fair. The first reason we give is the one Nikki Haley has given over and over again.
I said earlier this week that no matter what happens in South Carolina, I would continue to run for president. I'm a woman of my word.
Haley believes she is the answer to an election most Americans don't want. A rematch between old guy number one and old guy number two.
I think you've just got two candidates we are very well acquainted with, and not a lot of enthusiasm right now across the board for them.
I think Americans want more than what they had under President Trump and what they are getting under President Biden.
She also has strong opinions about Trump, specifically, accusing him of being soft on Putin.
He's siding with the dictator instead of siding with our allies.
And she needles him for spending more time in court than on the campaign trail.
He's gotten more unstable and unhinged.
She didn't really start making those distinctions until after she got rid of everybody else in the primary process. And so if you're asking voters to change their minds about Trump, you've got to show them you've changed your mind about Trump.
And if nothing else, we know Haley is capable of changing her mind on Trump. After telling Republican voters in 2016, Donald Trump is everything I taught my children not to do in kindergarten, she did end up voting for him.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the United Nations, has been very special to me.
Even served as his ambassador to the UN, which brings us to the next possible reason she might be staying in the race. I'll admit, this one is a long shot. Once upon a time, you would see reporting out there suggesting Haley could legitimately be Trump's pick for VP. After all, it seemed to be a plausible strategy for Vivek Ramaswamy, who did run against Trump early in the primaries, but effectively as a Trump ally.
Why don't you say this? Join me in making a commitment that on day one you would pardon Donald Trump. I'm the only candidate on the stage who had the courage to actually say it.
Loyalty matters to President Trump, but the thing that matters the most is going to be winning the presidency in November. If Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, who have been vigorous opponents, are going to put him closer to that goal than Vivek Ramaswamy, who has been, steadfast in his loyalty, then he's going to choose DeSantis or Haley.
So the longer Haley stays in the race, the more she can prove to voters and to Trump himself that she is a force to be reckoned with, the more she could, in theory, position herself as a viable running mate.
Haley will have an appeal for suburban women who lean Republican, but who have been really put off by Trump's behavior, and they don't love the chaos around him.
But yeah, that ship may have sailed. Holding out for a VP role, even a cabinet position, if that was the goal, she might not say stuff like this.
I don't believe Donald Trump can beat Joe Biden. Some people used to say I was running because I really wanted to be vice president. I think I've pretty well settled that question.
The number of politicians and politicians adjacent that we've seen make the leap to TV is staggering.
Prepare for a very bad case of whiplash as you watch this. Listen to the Biden administration.
I want to get our hands around a very difficult situation.
All right, Donald.
Hey, Joe, one other thing.
Don, you got to let us ask questions. You can't just talk. No, you got to let us actually ask questions.
We don't have the advantage. The animals have the advantage.
Dancing the tango with his partner Lindsay, it's Sean Spicer.
There even used to be a whole show on Radio Canada called Club des Ex, which was basically former politicians getting paid, giving their thoughts on the day's political issues.
She has dramatically raised her profile. And in politics and in public affairs, name ID is the name of the game. And that is, currency.
Now, no one is arguing that Haley is just in this race for whatever business opportunities might come later, including going from politician to pundit. But her brand benefits as long as she's a contender.
As long as the press right now is not going to hurt her in the long term, as long as she's not making too many people that she might need later on unhappy by staying in the race, she doesn't really lose anything by staying in the race.
And you certainly get more benefits by staying in than you do by getting out. Donald Trump is never going to appoint her to anything again, not the national dog catcher. So why would she drop out?
Haley, though, has a pretty clear position on this, too.
If I was running for a bogus reason, I would have dropped out a long time ago.
So we do have to allow some space for Nikki Haley to be in this race because she thinks she can win.
I'm gonna count it. I know 40% is not 50%. But I also know 40% is not some tiny group.
Her biggest complaint to those writing her off has been to wonder why she would be so quick to leave when most American states have yet to even hold their primary. 90% of races haven't even happened yet. And it's worth remembering, she's pulled off big upsets before. 20 years ago, it was a big story when Nikki Haley first ran for a House seat in South Carolina. In her party's primary, she was up against the 30-year incumbent, Larry Coon, the longest-serving legislator in the State House at the time. She lost that vote, but it was so close it went to a runoff, and she came from behind to beat him. That was like political nitro for her. It really set the stage for the next 2 decades. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say Nikki Haley has a shot at winning the primary. Maybe all I'm trying to say is what explains that t-shirt that I showed you at the start. But there is a way she can win. It's just a bit of an upstream swim. As we said at the start, nearly every reporter and analyst out there has written Nikki Haley off. No shot at winning, unless something were to happen to Donald Trump.
He could be theoretically the president from behind bars in Georgia.
The prevailing theory among those who think she has any shot at all is that she's just waiting for a miracle. What if Trump goes to prison? Somehow does or says something to turn MAGA against him? Or what if he dies?
You never know what's going to happen tomorrow, and there are 8 months to go before the general. So she is the last opponent standing, and she'd like to stretch this out as long as possible. The difficulty with that theory is the remaining delegates who will be pledged overwhelmingly to Donald Trump would be very, very unlikely to nominate her in Trump's place.
Donald Trump is facing 4 criminal indictments. He's accused of being an insurrectionist. He's been ordered to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in civil trials. There are severe restrictions on how he can do business in the state of New York. There is no absolute certainty about whether Trump actually makes it to the finish line. And, the thinking goes, Nikki Haley could be in the best possible position to take advantage. She could even be thinking much longer term.
That is the most credible and potentially active possibility. No doubt if Trump loses, particularly if he loses badly, Nikki Haley will run again. And she'll say in a nicer way, I told you so.
I know she's not saying this publicly, but I would fully expect to see Nikki Haley running for president again 4 years from now, probably.
Yes, she could be positioning herself not for a win in 2024, but a win in 2028. Betting against Trump, though, is hard. For starters, Trump's legal troubles have largely bolstered his popularity. He's fundraised off of them, and many of his supporters believe the charges are bogus.
Are the indictments changing how you feel?
No, because I do think a lot of that is for effect.
A lot of those are trumped up.
There's also no guarantee that if Trump just fell off the edge of the planet, Haley would just win by default.
You have to know the Trump delegates and the people around Trump. They're not going to defect, and they're certainly not going to support an enemy of Donald Trump's.
There are many answers to the question, what is Nikki Haley even doing right now? But the only thing we can say for sure, she's pretty determined to keep her eyes on the ball.
We're headed to Michigan tomorrow. And we're headed to the Super Tuesday states throughout all of next week.
Until then, we'll just have to wait and see.